Hey everyone, Tactics here, kicking off my Keystone Legend and Hero Guide series where I'm going to be taking you through one of my live server runs of Operation Floodgate, talking you through the route that we use, as well as giving you some tips and tricks to help you unlock your portals and get that new Keystone Legend mount. In this series, the routes are going to get a little bit more complicated than my pug-friendly routes, doing things like small skips as well as just larger pulls in general, but we're still going to be avoiding doing anything super crazy complex, which just isn't required to time keys in the plus 10 to plus 12 range. That being said, if you are looking for content going over those more complicated routes, if you're pushing towards the Mythic Plus title, I'm going to be doing a whole separate series on those things later on in the season. So if you're interested in that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Otherwise, let's get into the video here, where to start off, I'm going to be running up the side of the hill here. This is a skip I briefly kind of mentioned. It's not even really a skip. You're just kind of running up the hill to get a decent first pull with cooldowns and stuff. And the main thing is avoiding the hyena and the patrol up here. Let me just increase the speed of this video real quick. There we go. You can see them kind of walking towards you, so you need to be relatively quick on mounting up and running up this way. And you also want to make sure you're hugging the right here. You basically hug this line right here because you're trying to avoid the snipers and the shredder on the side here. You want to walk right up past them, grab these hyenas, grab the blood warper right here, make sure everyone gets by. And then there's also a set of hyenas behind us, which I grab as well. And then this is basically just a pull with a lot of tank damage, and then just the group damage from the Blood Warper. So as long as your healers prep for the Blood Warper, this pull is almost entirely on your tanks. You have the soldiers hitting your tank, putting a debuff on them. You have the hyenas just hitting the tank. So it's not like a super dangerous pull for everyone else, but it is a pull that, there's quite a bit of tank damage. So your tank needs to be definitely prepared for this. We also don't commit Bloodlust here. As you can tell, we do commit our damage cooldowns, and then we're going to use Bloodlust on the next pull when we get to the damage amp phase of the boss. So that's how this is supposed to go. That's how the skip works. I'll call it a skip, but it's not like really a skip. I think we need to beware pets here. I think pets can do weird stuff too when you jump down. I don't remember. I don't think this is the pull, but I think at one of our runs this week, we had pets drag that shredder on the side there, so be aware if you're a pet class. And then we're just going straight into the boss here with the two contractors on the side here. As a tank, only big thing here, make sure you have a CD on the Electro Crush every single time. For everyone else, if you are grouped up a little bit closer here, it can be easier for these mecha drones grouping up, and you just want to keep a kick always ready for whatever drone ends up actually doing the cast. And otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't really matter where you play in this room, honestly. At most, you'll have like 2 puddles, maybe 3 puddles on the ground. And so starting in the middle of the room here is not a big deal. And you can see we're just kind of pointing the sonic booms away from the group and just making it a bit easier to avoid them and not get hit by that final detonation. See, boom, walks out of it, doesn't get hit at all. Here we're going to be, we Bloodlust here, finish up these drones. And then we have damage for the shield here, which is just barely after the killer block barrier, not a big deal. Remember, that is a big DR, so you don't want to be doing too much damage to the boss at that point. You want to make sure you're focusing those adds down. We get Bloodlust for the whole duration of our first damage amp, and then we get a little bit here on the next set of drones. This is usually the slower set for people because of committing all their damage on the damage amp, which is obviously what you should do, but it can be nice if you lust just as the damage amp starts, because then you have more lust to help you get these adds down in time. But that is his boss here. Let's go past the boss a little bit. First stockpile pull, nothing crazy here. It's just the 2 packs here, the soldiers and the blood warper. And I believe, so I believe this is where we mess up the route a little bit, still messing around with stuff. So what we should have done here is there's the 2 frontal guys here. They should have come into this pull here. And then after that, we needed to do this pull down here. And I will actually link the route here. I actually have it open in game, I think. So we forgot to add these 2 guys here, and we didn't do this pull here. And that's important because it lets us skip a bunch of stuff later, and we don't realize that until we're already down there. We're like, oh, we definitely missed some counts. So this is going to be important for our skip later on in the dungeon. Let's go back to the run, though. Walk through the rest of it. Nothing really crazy here. The big thing is loader bots. They are mechanics, so they're immune to disorients and fears. So you need to make sure you have some other AoE CCs prepped to stop their wind up here. And they're kind of lined up, right? So it's not a big deal. We have Shockwave. I think we have Blast Wave, stuff like that already. So as long as you have an AoE stun or some other form of AoE stop to be ready on those, that isn't a disorient and isn't a fear, makes them so much easier to handle. Going up here, Same deal with the Blood Warpers, really. It's just having a kick rotation so your tank doesn't get owned, and then making sure your healer is prepped for every single Warp Blood. One thing about the Demolitionists, which are probably going to be a mob you're going to pull a lot of on higher keys, is that you just keep a stop near the end of that reload cast, and then he has to recast it. He's never going to spawn those circles again, basically, if you just keep doing these like short CCs or just to interrupt the cast or late in the cast. Boom, interrupted. And you just never have to deal with the circles. It's really convenient. Getting the box here. Flying down. We're flying down to the left here. Very similar to the pug-friendly route. We're going to grab this pack here, the loader bots and the hyenas in the corner. Also, one thing to note in this area and in the area of trash before the next boss is you need a total of 3 of the bombshell crabs across all of those pulls, again in combination with the pulls we mentioned earlier, in order to pull off the skip at the end to have the count. So it doesn't matter where you add it. I like adding them individually because having a single bombshell crab in a pull is not really a big deal. So like adding 1 to this pull, adding 1 to this pull, and adding 1 to either the pull over before the next boss or before the third boss, wherever you add them, just a total of 3 is what you need here. Going through here, double hyenas, not super scary. Hyenas are also another mob I bet you're going to try and pull a lot of. We pulled 3 here. I think it was a pet. Yeah, we had a pet accidentally pull all 3 of these guys. Oh, no, it wasn't a pet. It was a mind control. We're messing around with mind controls in this area to see if there's anything decent. Nothing super crazy on that front, but our mind control did pull all 3 of the bombshell crabs we needed into a single pull, which I don't recommend. But it's not the end of the world. You can see at the end here, where the bombshells go off. We have the triple bombshell. It's not the end of the world. We survive. Actually, that was only a double, and he mind controlled the last one, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he did. He mind controlled the last one. Going on to the next pull again, you can easily tap this 1 crab if you still needed it. Pull it into this pull. Make sure you have surveyor kicks. These are probably one of the more dangerous mobs in this dungeon because even just their initial channel can actually own people. There's that little crab. So especially if there's 2 of these in a pull, like the double surveyor pull, I think the not the next pull, but the pull after has double surveyors, and there's a lot of other pulls with double surveyors. You really want to make sure you kick that quickly, and you don't let the channel go off at all if you can help it, because you're going to see people get absolutely owned by that, even in this dungeon. When you're pulling divers as well, you need to be very careful of the harpoons, because they can obviously grip people through the bombs. And if you have immunities, you can use immunities to just clear those bombs if no one's near them as well. But if you have the kicks here, because again, this is a pull with literally 3 kicks total, so just have 1 person assigned to each kick and you are more than fine. We finish off that crab that we stole. Going up here, doing this sniper pull. Again, this is a pull I expect you to cut in higher keys, because I think in general you're going to try and pull as few snipers as possible. They just deal a little bit too much damage with their random target snipe stuff, especially if they sync up. So I'm guessing you're going to avoid this, but on the 10 to 12 key level, they're really not that scary. And again, they're just mobs where you just need 1 kick. So you have 3 mobs here with 1 kick. The hyenas are kind of whatever. If you kick them, great. If you don't, not a big deal. And then that's the pull. And then you go up here. This is a harder pull because it is a double surveyor and shredder pull. I believe this is the first shredder we're pulling, so you need to be really careful. Watch the shredation channel. As soon as it finishes or gets close to finishes, that's when you start moving. So you can see here we're waiting, moving as soon as it starts, getting kicks on these surveying beams, especially if those target 2 people. We have the windups going. We don't really have a lot planned for the windups here. We threw a binding shot down, but obviously that's not going to instantly proc. And the other thing here is the flamethrower. And you see here, I kind of plant for this flamethrower, and I almost treat it like it's a tank defensive ability. And so I'll pop a personal for it here and just eat the tank frontal to make sure it's pointed away from people. And I'll, wait and let it pick which direction it's going to rotate in. But I don't actually do a lot to try and avoid the initial ticks of the ability. I just have defensives running. Getting shredation, getting ready to move, moving as soon as it goes off to some safe space. It helps to cluster these a little bit, especially if you're in melee and range, to not have the entire area covered. So if you're kind of generally close together and then move in a similar direction, it makes it a lot easier to handle here. And then that is this pull. This is one of the more dangerous pulls in here for sure. And then we're going to be crossing here. And this is where it's a pull that's definitely pretty different than the pug route. So we don't want to just pull these contractors and architect. It's 3 mobs, and also the contractors do nothing. So instead, we're going to add the triple diver into this. So that's 1 kick per diver. And then we're going to also add the quad crocolisk over here. That's just a tank buster on each of them. So All this goes into this pull, 1 kick per diver to deal with the bombs. And then obviously you're killing the scaffolding, and make sure you get aggro on these mobs. Be careful for your healer. I think I might have to commit Bubble Taunt early here. I don't remember to try and get aggro on everything, but no, we're okay. We ended up getting aggro eventually, but really it's just making sure you get kicks on all these divers and you are slowly moving for these orbs. This is a healing reduction debuff on your tank, so you need to be careful of that. Later on in the pull, I use bubble to clear it here, but you could use things like AoE stuns to get rid of them, or just AoE stun the pack and leap away to drop your debuff, for example, if you really need to. And that's the pull. It's a much nicer, bigger pull, which still only keeps 1 architect, because I think chaining these 2 together, double architect, is kind of scary. You don't really want to do double architect, so that let's just keep a single architect. We'd have a casualty there to a bomb, I believe, but we're gonna continue on. Mind Soothe, jump up this pack. I'm pretty sure you don't need Mind Soothe either for this, by the way, if you can just parkour properly, or, you know, if you have any threat reduction CCs, or if you have Shroud, all that will get you up here. I expect a lot of people, again, on higher keys will skip this pull as well, but on the 10 to 12 key level, this actually lines up nicely for our second Bloodlust. As you can see, our Lust is now back up, and so we're going to actually pull everything here and Lust it for good CD value. Again, this is going to be another double surveyor pull, so you need to be very, very careful, but those are the only kicks. Here come the flamethrowers, and this is what I'm talking about. I like to point them in the exact same spot here, which is why, you know, make sure you are, you know, have a defensive going so that you can have some consistency in where those flamethrowers are going to spawn. And then we're ready to move Shredation. We try and stay relatively grouped up. Could have been maybe a little bit better than this, but it's not the end of the world. Again, Shredation again. Keep moving to the safe space. Keep moving to the safe space. Try and get kicks as quickly as possible. Flamethrowers, I plant and point them away from my group so they have the most time to react to those flamethrowers. I have a defensive running for it, and then I move for, and then just get ready to move for the next shredation. That's just how we handle pretty much all shredders, right? Just the same way. But especially this double shredder pack, having the consistency of pointing both those frontals away from your group so that they can react and have a lot of time to react is definitely ideal. Then we get to Bront and Kiza. So these guys are pretty straightforward. You know, you're making sure you're getting as many of the bombs as possible. Kinetic Explosive Gel does start to tick quite hard. So pre-moving as range and pre-standing near bombs can be very useful. You can see the target too. Right? You can see it's targeting him. He immediately starts running and he can get dispelled very, very quickly. So you don't really need to worry about that dot owning people if you're able to dispel it quickly. And here now, we're basically getting all the bombs. Now that we've identified we've gotten all the bombs, this can just be instantly dispelled. Boom. Even that, like, he took like half his health almost from that, just like 1 tick or so. He was a little bit lower to begin with, but still, it's a very, very scary dot. It's going to scale quite scary, so you need to be very, very, very careful. And even if you are the target, press a defensive, because there's really not a ton of other damage here to be dealing with in general. That's this boss, so we can just kind of move on here. Obviously, Lust doesn't line up. We lusted the pack before this. Make sure you guys click this, by the way. I know some people have been asking. There's this gun right here, user extraction button. This shoots down the Zeppelin, in case you didn't know that, and you don't deal with the circles in this area. And then we're doing our Disturbed Kelp pull. This is also a pull where you could add a single crab into, again, if you wanted to. This is pretty straightforward. We have a mass dispel, so we are not super concerned with getting every single kick, but we do want to make sure that if there's a couple jettison kelps going off like that, we use a stop, because one of them channeling is not a big deal, but multiple of them channeling can deal quite a bit of damage. You want to be really, really careful like this. You can see how low people are getting there with 2 of them channeling, let alone like if 3 of them started to channel. So you need to be very, very careful with these guys, but overall, not too big a deal. And then we have Swampface, who has been farming a lot of people. This boss did get nerfed, so that is good. Hopefully it's been a bit easier, but it's really just a very, very heavy movement fight for your DPS and your healer, while also being a very heavy throughput fight, kind of similar to the second last boss of Halls of Infusion, if you guys remember that. That was like the big healer fight, and the reason for that is because there's just so much ticking damage, because 4 of you have the Razor Choke Vines, is a ticking dot, and then there's also the big hit from Awaken the Swamp, which just channels for the whole duration. So you're taking a lot of damage over the course of this fight. At the same time, right, you got so much to dodge, so you need to be really careful. We kind of make a rule for the partners that you always move left. Why am I not moving with the group? Well, because everyone is alive, and it's much easier for me as a paladin to kind of chill in my consecrate over here, because I know I'm not going to be assigned as long as everyone's alive. You're going to see someone die here soon, and then I immediately run to the group, but just be aware, like, especially as a paladin, it's easier for me to stay in my consecrate over here, right? If you're another tank that can move with the group, that's fine. But for me, it's easier this way. You need to be really careful for these circles. This is a pretty bad spawn for them. They probably need to back up a little bit, but even then there's one here. So you need to be very, very careful of the waves here. Be ready to dodge. And we lose someone here, identify that and move over towards the rest of the group here because I know I'm going to be picked here. I have a small defensive running for this tank buster. Note to tanks, this is one of the harder hitting tank busters so far this season. It's pretty far apart, right? They're like 25 seconds apart or something like that. So you can have a decent defensive rotation on this. And that's pretty much the only thing you need because the group damage on this fight you're not super concerned with. So just make sure you load up a bit on those casts. And again, if you have healing throughput as well, you can use that immediately after the cast goes off on you to get rid of that healing absorb on you. So I'm moving with the group here now. In terms of defensive usage and throughput usage, the big thing is to make sure that the healer and the rest of your group is rotating through things as needed. So, as throughput is needed, it's rotated through. As defensives are needed, like we used a barrier, mage barrier, mass barrier on the first one. We still have rally. We still have disc barrier as needed for some of the later casts of the Awaken the Swamp. And outside of Awaken the Swamp, your healer should generally be okay, but it's really within Awaken the Swamp where you want to make sure you have some sort of coverage, especially as key levels go higher. And you see you're just rotating around here as needed as a group. Again, we have a general rule of moving left, but if it was like something like this, for example, right, we can just, it's an easy calm of like, hey, moving left here is kind of troll. Right, like moving left here is very troll in the situation. Right? You want to move right here, so you have to be able to adapt a little bit on the fly depending on your spawns. But having a general rule, especially for the frontal, I think for the frontal you should always obey your rule because you always have more than enough time to dodge it, and especially if you're all stacked up, right? Like technically right was a little closer, but obey the rule in that case, right? But that is this boss, so there's no secret to it. It's really just about having your throughput, not popping it all at once. And, staggering things like defensive, staggering things like healing CDs to make sure that you have coverage for as many Awaken the Swamps as possible. And then it's just about, being predictable with your movement. Moving down, we've got bubbles. Not too much here. This guy kind of owns. We do stack up to, put all the bubbles in one spot. But again, it's like all the damage you get here is concentrated in backwash. So if you have personals, if you have healing throughput, don't overlap them. And do your best to stagger them and just have coverage for every cast. You probably don't want to have more than like 3 casts, maybe 4 casts of this ability on this guy. I think we have 3 on the second fast forward, but I think we have 3. We defeat just before the third action. So you don't want too much going on there because eventually you are going to run out of stuff. You get a little recovery pool here. We are going to pull this little patrol in. Double electrician here. Paladins, obviously any group with a prop paladin has a much easier time with double electrician because the prop paladin can lock down one on their own, and then the rest of the group can kick the other one. Groups with other prop paladin, you may need to rely more on other player kicks. You may need a healer kick to be able to do it more reliably, but this is something that's not too bad. Make sure you're getting dispels on the magic dot, otherwise people are going to get stunned as well. And this is where we're like, oh, we don't have enough count, so we're like, okay, we have to make up a pull here. What we would really do in this situation in the route is we're going to hug this way, and you can Mind Soothe, and you can skip everything here with just Mind Soothe. Obviously, if you have Shroud, you can do that. Obviously, if you have threat reduction CCs like Sap, like Imprison, you can do that as well. You can Invis Pot. But this pull wouldn't exist because we would just have count. This pull goes a little bit weird too because I believe we're like, oh, we probably need the guys behind us. Yeah. So this pull just goes weird. It's not actually in the route. Don't recommend it. Yeah, I think we have like 2 deaths in it or something like that. Yeah, 2 people died. That's okay. We res. But now let me show you the actual somewhat difficult part of the skip because we still do that to just make sure it works. And basically, it's again either a soothe or 2 threat reduction CCs. Note the jump starter is not soothed because he's Lieutenant Mob. So we jump here and you jump over the corner. And then again, you hug this cubby, and then you come back around this cubby, and that's the skip. So it's not that hard, but it's something to be aware of. And in ideal scenario, you'd have enough count that you wouldn't need to pull the pack we just did, and you wouldn't need to pull these guys, and these guys would be the end of your count. And you would just focus one of them down here to get rid of their extra damage. just a little bit faster. I think we end up just cleaving these guys because it's kind of whatever. But, you know, we have to go back here and get these guys because we don't have count still. But yeah, that's the actual route. And again, I have the actual route. I'll link it down in the description for you guys to actually see the pulls I recommend, and not the pulls that we're just YOLOing here at the end. And that brings us to the final boss, who does hit quite hard, both in terms of the group damage in this turbocharge phase, as well as the tank damage from the actual Thunder Punch. So as a paladin here, I'm not really able to actually stop the knockback of the punch. Oh, you stole an electrician again. Messing around with mind controls. So I put my back to this console here, pop some defensives, and generally my plan with these defensives is I'm going to put my weaker defensives on the first one, and I put my stronger defensives on the second hit, because that's also when there's going to be knockbacks, or sorry, leaping sparks rather, that you have to be kiting at the same time. So remember, these sparks, they have the big red arrow above them, only one spark per puddle. If a spark goes into your puddle, you cannot use them. The other thing is that these puddles, they will disappear, I believe, like 20-ish seconds, maybe 30 seconds after they get shocked. So they're not going to be here forever. And the other thing is you can walk through these regular water puddles. There's no issue with that. They don't do anything really to you. And it's just the ones with electricity that you're scared of and don't really want to touch. So when you're in this phase, feel free to run straight through a water puddle if it's right next to you. You don't need to run all the way around. Just run straight through the puddle, and that makes it easier. There's also our lust, by the way. We did lust this as well. And we have a bunch of dots going out here because we have our mind control guy going off, which we're messing around with. Don't recommend it. Honestly, it's probably not a good idea. It's not even very strong, this particular mob, in terms of being mind controlled. But yeah, it's similar to the first boss, or the boss we just mentioned here. Turbocharge happens like every 45 seconds or something like that. Make sure you have some sort of coverage, whether that be group defensive, whether that be personal defensives, whether that be healing CDs. Something for every single turbocharge phase is needed, especially as you go towards the 12 key level and above. So make sure that's good. And then again, here, getting the sparks in. We do have quite a bit of puddles taking up the space here, but again, this is not actually lost space. This is like fake lost space. You're allowed to walk through all these puddles as I did there. So don't be afraid of these. It's not ideal if you hit them with a circle, but when you have this many puddles, for example, it wouldn't be the end of the world if one person with the Gigazap debuffs accidentally cleaved to one of these puddles. Obviously, you're trying to avoid that, but it's really not a big deal if it ever does happen. And I think that's pretty much it for this dungeon, guys. So hopefully this helps you with Operation Floodgate. Seems to be one of the harder dungeons of this season, and if it did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it, including Keystone Legend Route walkthroughs just like this one for every other dungeon this season, as well as a separate little series on the 0.1% title and how routes differ when you're pushing for that title. As always, shout out to all my amazing Patreons for their continued support, and I'll see everyone in the next video.